Good evening, everyone. Uh, this afternoon, I attended a panel discussion put on by Campus Greensboro as well as a young professionals organization called Synergy. And the title of this panel discussion was Growing Greensboro for the Next Generation. And it was held at Greensboro College, which is just west of downtown Greensboro along the Market Street corridor. The moderator of today's panel discussion was Brent Christensen, who is the president and CEO of the Greensboro Chamber of Commerce. And the two participants in this panel discussion were Dr. Lawrence Zarda, who's the president of Greensboro College, as well as Arthur Samet, who's president and CEO of the Samet Corporation. And I recognize the Samet name because most days when I go to work down in High Point, I usually cross a street called Samet Drive. And Samet Drive is right by this big shopping center in High Point called the Palladium. Or Palladium, whichever, but yeah, it's a big, huge shopping center in High Point. That was built probably about 10 years ago, and it's a good shopping center. It's got a huge movie theater, and it's got a Belk department store and a bunch of other stores. The problem with it was, though, it put the Oak Hollow Mall out of business, and the Oak Hollow Mall just opened up in 1995, so it was like for a mall, it was like really new. But Oak Hollow Mall, I believe it's been closed for, I'd say, about a year, 2 years, something like that. But anyway, the first question that Mr. Christensen asked the panel was, what are your thoughts on economic developments? And Dr. Sarza said, well, wages, when you have good economic development, wages are always going up. And we have 7 colleges and universities, 7 colleges and universities within the Greensboro city limits. And he said higher education is the part of the foundation for sound economic development. And Mr. Christensen said Greensboro does not have the moniker of a college town. However, Gainesville, Florida has only one college, but it's the University of Florida. However, if University of Florida decided one day to close up, then the economy of Gainesville would collapse. Whereas if you have one college in Greensboro close, the economic consequences would not be as severe because you'd still have 6 other colleges. And then Mr. Samet, talked about economic development equals job creation. And he asks some rhetorical questions. What's the labor shed? Where can I get my talent first? And that's what a lot of companies ask when they're looking to move their company and relocate jobs to the Greensboro area. And then Mr. Christensen asked the panel, when would you say is the highest high for economic development in Greensboro? And Mr. Samet replied, right now. Dr. Sarza said what's good for the city is good for Greensboro College, and the city is going to be completed by the year 2020 a downtown greenway that will border on the entire east side of Greensboro College campus. And he said another advantage Greensboro College has to the Greensboro community is it has good walkability to downtown, as well as access to leisure and restaurants. So then Mr. Christensen asked a follow-up question. He said, what things do you think are lacking in Greensboro? And, so Dr. Sarza said the biggest complaint he gets is that there's no supermarket in downtown. You always have to go to Friendly Center, you have to go up Friendly Center west of town, or you have to go north of town along the Lawndale Drive corridor. And he also says that there are no nightclubs either. That's something that when he was getting ready to take the job as president of Greensboro College about back in 2010, the day before he was hired, he put on a ball cap and a sweatshirt, walked around downtown, and just, asked people, and that was what came out was the night, he asked students, what are you for fun around here? He said, oh, I wish there was a nightclub and all that. Now, personally, I am not a nightclub person. I'm very introverted. I'm very conservative, low-key. A nightclub for me would be like if I go out to see a comedy show or something like that, but not anything, involving alcohol or dancing, or certainly not the strip club ride either. And then Mr. Christensen asked, what role can young people play in the development of Greensboro? Mr. Samet said, well, we get interns from all over the country, and they try to put youthful energy into downtown. Another thing is obviously real estate is a big factor too in developing Greensboro. There's a lot of renovation of older properties, and he credited Marty Kotis with a lot of redevelopment. But he also mentioned Durham. I said about 20 years ago, Durham used to be a very sketchy place after 9 o'clock at night. But now he says actually Durham is so desirable that people are moving from Chapel Hill to Durham. And Chapel Hill is really, when you look at the triangle, the Raleigh-Durham area, I mean, Chapel Hill is like really probably the most desirable place to live. That and Cary, I would say. But also mentioned, Greensboro, we try to look at other college towns like Boise, Idaho, and Austin, Texas, too. And then, I believe it's Dr. Sarza mentioned the Union Square campus. It's a $40 million investment. And there are many partners in this investment. It's at the corner of Gate City Boulevard and Elm Street. And this is between University of North Carolina at Greensboro, Guilford Technical Community College, North Carolina A&T, as well as Cone Health System. This is a business and college partnership, and basically it's to create a medical school to deal with the nurse shortage in the area, and of course nationwide. But Dr. Sarza was also mentioned that they have these $80,000 mannequins that are very lifelike. I mean, they can bleed, they can give birth. He was saying all kinds of stuff. And then the moderator asked the next question: what is your big dream for Greensboro? If money was no object, what is your big dream? Mr. Samet responded by saying, he'd like to see a downtown student union owned by all the colleges. It creates a good vibe, build housing around it, good student and affordable housing for the general public, as well as it creates a feeling of diversity, because when you have 7 colleges in Greensboro, I think Guilford is religious college as well as Greensboro. Now, I know definitely Greensboro's affiliated. I think Greensboro and Guilford are affiliated with United Methodist Church. I think Bennett College is another one too. But yeah, a lot of course, then the public, the UNCG, that's a lot of diversity there too. But he also talked about, something with restaurants, food, music venue, and Mr. Samet also said the private sector, which I'm glad he mentioned the private sector, because that's, I think that means he's a guy, he's like, he's a conservative like me, who knows. So the private sector would take this project and run with it. And Dr. Sarza then responded jokingly, said, hey, well, I'd like to build it on a river. Okay. And then Dr. Sarza said, we have to think a step ahead for the jobs that don't exist yet. Our students that graduate from Greensboro College are adaptable and good problem solvers. We do produce many teachers and many ministers at Greensboro College, but we also produce a lot of people working in real estate, as well as one of our alumni was president, general manager of the Winston-Salem Dash minor league baseball team, and now he's been promoted to president of the Carolina League, which is the high A level of minor league baseball. And then Mr. Samet said we're building a conference center and a hotel for High Point University. Because he says it's good to cater to students and young professionals, but it's also good to cater to their parents too, so their parents have a sense of belonging, and feel good about where their kids go to college. Now, Dr. Sarza said that if you go on the Greensboro College website, and I have personally, there's a video on the website, and it's a video shot from a drone. It's probably about 2 minutes long. It's really good, though. But it's a drone footage of the entire Greensboro College campus. Okay. But also, it shows you the downtown area, and it basically shows the colleges right downtown. And then the panel discussion, it transferred into a Q&A session with the general public audience. And the first question was, Greensboro is a liberal arts, has a reputation for liberal arts, college education, the city general. Wake Forest has Baptist Hospital, so a lot of your biotech, your health services, and the Triangle is tech. So the question was, how can Greensboro carve out its niche in the regional economy? And Mr. Samet first said, well, Greensboro, we have to know who we are as a city. And he also says, well, Greensboro is great for supply chain and manufacturing jobs. And these are the kind of, they're great paying jobs, but they're not high tech. And he also mentioned Elon University, which is in Burlington, probably about 20 miles east of Greensboro, as well as North Carolina A&T has a good reputation for their engineering school. Okay. And then Mr. Samet also mentioned that when we recruit companies, especially ones come from Southern California, we say to them that a 45-minute commute equals 45 miles, whereas in Southern California, a 45-minute commute equals only 5 miles. And this also opens up anybody wants to relocate not just to Greensboro, but Winston-Salem, Burlington, Durham, High Point, even Southern Virginia, Martinsville, Danville. And then Dr. Sarza says, the one bad thing I'd say about Greensboro is that we are lagging behind other metro areas for degree completion by working adults. And he also mentioned, but one thing we can tell companies here that's pretty neat is, and I didn't even know this either, y'all, this is pretty compelling. Did you know every single tube of Crest toothpaste is made in Greensboro, North Carolina? Because of Procter & Gamble has a office manufacturing place here. And that's pretty wild, isn't it? Pretty cool. And then there was a question about what are opportunities to retain young people and keep them in Greensboro. Mr. Samet said, well, we have to recruit businesses because businesses are the ones who create the jobs. And he says, we can make the coolest downtown and have the best restaurants and the best tapping and music place. But if you can't find a job in Greensboro, I mean, you're not going to have the money to enjoy the restaurants, the shops, the music, what have you. Okay. Mr. Samet also mentioned we really have a low cost of doing business. He says that when he does contracts with companies who are constructing the office buildings here and the manufacturing buildings here from California, the contracts from California, he'll get them back the very next day. And sometimes I'll think that we made a mistake with how much it costs because we have North Carolina versus California has a much lower cost of doing business. And then a member from the audience just made a remark that, yeah, I used to live in Southern California. Been in Greensboro, I think she said like 15 years or so. But she said that, I mean, just getting to LAX, the airport in Los Angeles, I mean, it's a 3-hour drive with how bad the traffic is versus about 10, 12 minutes. You can go from downtown Greensboro to PTI Airport here, Piedmont Triad International Airport. But the Chamber of Commerce says the best jobs in Greensboro right now are your warehouse, your logistics jobs, as well as your manufacturing jobs. But he said, the Greensboro area, we would like to see more office projects. We'd like to bring in more jobs, the caliber of a Lincoln Financial or a VF, aka Vanity Fair Fashion Company, too. The chamber president also said another challenge that Greensboro has in terms of the economic development is that Raleigh and Charlotte are very well known to people that, outsiders, people that don't live outside people that know about North Carolina, but they don't live in North Carolina. Yeah, your common outsider who lives in New York, California, South Florida, all these big cities who want to relocate to North Carolina, but they don't know about Greensboro. And he said another thing, but the two biggest things we have going for us in Greensboro that the chamber president mentioned was lower real estate cost, as well as less traffic issues. And then Mr. Samet responded and says, if we really, really want to take Greensboro to the next level as far as economic development, he said that we really need to encourage residents here to use PTI Airport. He says that, a lot of times you'll find it cheaper. You save $100, on a flight fly to Raleigh or Charlotte. But he said the time you have to drive to Raleigh or Charlotte is not free. And he always says whenever he drives to Charlotte, he's always playing Russian roulette, driving through the northeast suburb of Concord. And I would have to say personally, I have to agree with him about driving through Concord. It's a mess. I mean, I was there on a Saturday about 4.5 years ago for a North Carolina Republican Party Executive Committee meeting, and I just was blown away by how bad the traffic was. On a Saturday in the middle of February, for crying out loud. Now, this is probably one of my most favorite questions of the evening, is what I'm going to discuss next. There's a member of the audience that said, okay, Greensboro. The nice thing about Greensboro is that we don't have the traffic problems of Raleigh or Charlotte. Then he said, but if we keep building Greensboro, won't we become just like Raleigh and Charlotte as far as traffic goes? And then Mr. Samet said, well, Greensboro historically has always been ahead. The infrastructure, highway infrastructure here, has always been ahead of the development here versus Charlotte, which is really far behind, and then Raleigh, which is a little bit better but still pretty bad. And then the Chamber of Commerce president, he responded, says, look, when you have good infrastructure, though, you start to attract businesses. And he said one of the biggest reasons why Publix is developing a distribution center out in eastern Guilford County is because they have really good access to I-40 as well as the Greensboro Urban Loop, aka I-785, and they have really good freeway access to Virginia as well as the Triangle and Charlotte and everywhere else in North Carolina. And then Mr. Samet said that infrastructure is a huge thing, and it's one big thing that Greensboro has going for it. But he said basically that if you're trying to recruit a company that, and most big, especially the big companies that you want to have in a community, like your Publix and your FedEx and your Walmart and so forth, they're going to have probably 50, 100, over 100 trucks that they're running out of their distribution center every day. And the key thing is that if you're going to have a truck make more than 2 left turns to get onto an interstate highway, the company is not going to want to come to your community. And then Mr. Samet also mentioned the I-73 bypass that goes around Summerfield in the northwest part of Greensboro that just opened a few months ago. says that that's really going to open up economic development in that part of Greensboro, because it's going to take what used to be a 30 to 45 minute commute on a 2-lane road with lots of traffic lights, US 220, and that's going to bring it down to a 10 to 12 minute from Summerfield out to the I-40 corridor, which goes, all the way from Wilmington through Raleigh, Durham, Greensboro, Winston-Salem, Hickory, Asheville, all the way over clear across the Tennessee to Nashville, and you can go a bunch of other cities from there. Okay. And the last question of the evening was by a member of the audience, and she wanted to know, what is the negative impact of VF, Vanity Fair, leaving Greensboro? And Mr. Samet first started by saying that, there's definitely a negative effect on the economy. It's a ripple effect, because you're going to have a lot of these were good paying jobs. A lot of the workers, their children were in private schools, so there's going to be less private school enrollment, as well as less people eating out at restaurants. Few less people eating out at restaurants, as far as less money in the philanthropic community of Greensboro and all the charity organizations. Then the Chamber of Commerce president responded by saying, there are 85 jobs leaving. So when you think about it, that's not a whole lot. But there's a new company that's going to come in to replace VF. But that, he said, it is an unknown quantity, and we don't know if it's going to be an equal absorption for the job loss. But he mentioned that when VF came to Greensboro back in the late 90s, early 2000, right around 2000, year 2000, he said their return on investment for the Greensboro community was in the top 10 nationwide as far as Fortune 500 companies. But he said, really, the reason why that they spun off their company to Denver rather than take their whole company to Denver was that they looked at Greensboro and they said, we have a low cost of living, and we have an well-educated workforce here in Greensboro. And they looked at how well VF did in their time here and looked at how well their results are. And that's why Lee Jeans and Wrangler Jeans are going to stay here, while the Vanity Fair division is going to go to Denver. But we're still going to have, some jobs that are staying in Greensboro. So it's not going to be a total tragic loss, as well as Publix is going to come in within a couple of years, and FedEx is expanding. We have Honda Jet, Hyco, Mack Trucks, a lot of good companies with good paying jobs, as well as, of course, where I work too. That's another big retailer that has good paying jobs too. Let's see. And then Mr. Samet also mentioned that we were this close, very millimeters away from landing an automotive plant. And he said another big thing is that big mega site that's out between Randolph, Alamance, and Guilford County, out on the US 421 corridor southeast of Greensboro. And he talked about that auto plant jobs are really, really good jobs, not just because they're good paying jobs and because the skills and training is not, it's not like you need a medical degree. You don't need to go to law school or medical school to get these jobs. Most times you need to go to community college for a year or two and get the training. But the main thing he said was, for every job you create for an auto plant, 10 more jobs are created in related industries. Because guess what? When you build an auto plant, you build an auto plant, I mean, guess what? You're going to have to hire FedEx, UPS to ship the parts out, obviously, to the various dealers around town, and a lot of other related industries. O'Reilly's going to hire more people because they're going to have more parts in the supply chain, and you get that too. And then Dr. Sarza, he closed by saying the good thing about VF was and he hopes it continues with the Lee, I guess it's going to be called Lee or Jeans or Wrangler or something like that, this new company. But he really hopes they stay philanthropically involved in the Greensboro community, as well as being invested with Arts Greensboro. So there you have it, a nice panel discussion all about how we can grow Greensboro for the next generation. For the Conservative Pelican, I'm Bobby Crawford. Thanks for watching.